Welcome back to Birds of a Feather. This is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. My name is Nathan Stroud, and today we're going to be going over and just talking about the current state of the Baltimore Ravens. It is currently Tuesday, October 7th. We are now 2 days removed from the absolute massacre of the 44-10 loss to the Houston Texans to drop the Ravens record to 1-4. But in today's episode, I kind of just wanted to talk about the state of the team and just my thoughts about everything going on. There is no Ravens practice today. Usually during the week when the Ravens have a normal Sunday game, their practices are on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that's for most teams in the NFL. But Ravens practice obviously starts back up tomorrow, so we're going to have a better understanding of the injuries and the injury report and who's available, who's not. What I will say is John Harbaugh yesterday did say that we will be healthier, or we should be more healthy going into week 6. So that's at least a good sign. I still don't expect Lamar Jackson to play. It's possible that we see Kyle Hamilton back out there. But Marlon, Humphrey, Roquan Smith, those guys are going to be gone. It's possible that we maybe see Ronnie Stanley. A lot of the guys that were limited in practice last week, and a lot of the guys that were questionable for the game in last week's game, those are the guys that we might see this week. But guys like Marlon, Humphrey, Roquan Smith, and probably Lamar Jackson, those guys for sure are not going to be playing on Sunday. But again, when it comes to the defensive talent of the Baltimore Ravens, obviously they are down a lot of players and the defense is not healthy. Not healthy at all, I should say. But to be honest with you guys, I really don't know how much of a difference it would even make if those guys were out there. I understand the guys that were missing are great players and they're great proven players. But again, I've said this a million times already this season. Ravens fans around the world are saying the exact same thing just because it's so glaringly obvious. It's glaringly obvious to everybody other than, I feel like, the Ravens. But this is a scheme issue. This is a defensive scheme issue. We've said it over and over again. The fact that Zach Orr is still employed as of Tuesday, October 7th, is crazy, because if there was going to be a coordinator or coaching change, not coaching change for Harbaugh, I do believe that Harbaugh should not be the head coach of the Ravens, but realistically, I don't see them firing him during the season. I think if they were going to fire Harbaugh, it would be after the season ends. But there is zero reason why Zach Orr should still have a job as of right now. The Ravens defense, we'll go over in just a second a stat about the Ravens defense that came out that is absolutely insane. But this defense is the first defense to give. It's on pace to be the first defense to ever give up 600 points, and it's also the amount of points that we've given up through the first 5 weeks, which as I think 177 total points. It's the most points ever given up by a team in NFL history through the first 5 weeks of an NFL season. So realistically, this defense is off to the worst start ever of a defense ever. Which is kind of just funny to say, because again, you look at the defense going into the year, and that was one of the going into the season. My worry was the offensive line. That was the one thing that I was a little bit iffy on. The defense, I didn't have a single worry about because of all the holes that were filled on defense. Maybe edge rush a little bit, maybe pass rush a little bit, but there's a lot more problems other than just pass rush for this defense. But again, the injuries play a part in it, but the scheme is so unbelievably bad. It's laughable how awful Zach Orr is as a defensive coordinator. And again, there should be zero Zach Orr defenders anymore. It's literally one of the worst starts it's the worst start to a season by a defense ever in NFL history through the first 5 weeks of the season. That is insane to me. So again, Zach Orr needs to be fired. Like in terms of the changes that need to happen with the Ravens right now, Zach Orr needs to go. But we're at a point in the week where it's a little bit too late now to just fire Zach. Like let's say in 30 minutes there's a report that comes out saying that we fired Zach Orr. That would be dumb, because then if we were going to promote Chuck Pagano, which is probably what's going to end up happening, because there was also a report that John Harbaugh has been actively talking to. Because Chuck Pagano is the senior defensive assistant. So he's kind of like the right-hand man here to Zach Orr, but he's not the one calling plays. But Chuck Pagano, someone who is known for his defense throughout his NFL career, he was a part of the old Ravens teams back in the day. But Chuck Pagano would be someone who could come in and play and be the defensive coordinator, and I would be a lot more comfortable with that. But with Zach Orr, there was a report that John Harbaugh has been actively talking to Chuck Pagano about the defensive situation. So again, it's like, why do you not just make him the defensive coordinator? Like, why do you still have someone who is very inexperienced in terms of coaching this defense up? And again, it's just been a disaster, obviously, looking at things from a hindsight point of view. But again, Zach Orr needs to go. We know this. I'll say it a million times until it actually happens. And again, the fact that he's still the defensive coordinator is insane to me. But realistically, what I think is going to happen is I do think that, like, again, the Rams are coming to Baltimore this Sunday. The Texans just put up 44 against us. And if the Houston Texans, who have been one of the worst offenses in the NFL through the first 4 weeks of the season, put up 44 points against this defense, even if we do get a little bit more healthy, this Rams team, with Zach Orr as the defensive coordinator of this Ravens defense, that Rams offense is going to put up some absolute historical numbers. They have Puka Nacua, who's like arguably, who in my opinion is the best receiver in the NFL right now. He's on pace to break the receiving record. He has some historical stuff going on right now with Puka. Then you have Devontae Adams, one of the better receivers of all time, someone who's also been playing really good. And then you have Kyren Williams, who's one of the better running backs in the league. So that Rams offense kind of funnels everything through those three players, and they are going to dominate this Ravens team. If you have any sort of dollar, for anybody listening, if you have any sort of dollar, and even if you don't sports bet, put all your money into Puka Nacua, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. That is an absolute lock if I've ever seen it. This Ravens defense is going to give up some historical. I'm not going to lie to you. I would be surprised if we didn't give up 50 points. And I'm being so serious when I say that. If this Ravens defense ends up holding the Rams to under 50 points, I might consider that an achievement, to be honest with you. But no matter what happens this week, unless this defense has an absolute miracle day, and unless Zach Orr can have one of the biggest turnarounds of all time from a week-to-week basis on a defensive coordinator end, which I doubt is going to happen, unless that happens, I'm sure he probably, most likely, if I had to put money on it, would get fired after this next game. If the Ravens fall to 1-5 and the defense has another disastrous performance, I do see Zach Orr getting fired right after the game, because what could end up happening is you have the rest of that week to implement Chuck Pagano, who I'm guessing would be the promotion. You have all that time to implement Chuck Pagano's plan. And then you have the entire bye week to also implement it, and then also, obviously, the game week leading up to the Bears game to implement it as well. So you'll have the entire bye week plus the game week to implement the new defense. So you have plenty of time to get the new defense accustomed to everything. You have the bye week to do so. And again, if there was going to be a coaching change, even with quarterback changes, if there was going to be a quarterback change, it would happen around a bye week because you just have more time to get ready for the game. So that's realistically what I think is going to happen. But again, we'll have to see on Sunday. And this is the stat real quick that I wanted to go over that I was talking about earlier, and it's the points allowed stat with this Ravens defense. And you go back to the 2000 Ravens defense, and again, I wasn't even born in the year 2000, so I never got to watch this Ravens defense. I'm sure, from what I've seen, obviously from clips and highlights and just the stories from from the Ravens, this 2000 Ravens defense is arguably the greatest defense of all time. They gave up 165 points through the entire 2000 season. 165 points through the entirety of the 2000 season. The 2025 Baltimore Ravens defense has given up 177 points through 5 weeks of this season. It's unheard of. It's absolutely, this stat right here is insane. And it's even crazier because this is the 30th anniversary of the Ravens. We're celebrating 30 years of the Baltimore Ravens franchise, and this legitimately might be not legitimately, this is the worst Ravens defense ever. From a team that has always prided itself on defense for years. There was a stat that they showed during the game against the Texans from the years 2000 to 2024. So over a 24-year span, including last season, from over a 24-year span, the Ravens defense, I think, was first in points allowed. I mean, like, when I say first in points allowed, I mean like they've given up the least amount of points in terms of a per game basis over a 24-year span, and then I think they're second in yards allowed. So in terms of like the two biggest defensive like statistics, yards allowed and points allowed, the Ravens were at the top of both of them. They were second in terms of least amount of yards per game, and then they were first in least amount of points on a per game basis for a defensive team. So again, a team that has always prided itself on defense. The Ray Lewises, the Hagolti Natas, the Ed Reeds, the Terrell Suggs, all of these legendary Ravens players over the years that have formed this team and have really built this franchise up. The Ravens franchise, much like the Steelers, are teams that have been prided on their defense and their capability of being very physical. That is what the Ravens have been known for really over the past 25 years, really over the past 30 years. A physical team, punch you in the mouth when you come into the bank, all that stuff. That's what this team has always been known for. Physicality and just being aggressive and always having a defense that can do its job. And again, you look back at the 2023 Ravens defense with Mike Macdonald as the defensive coordinator. A majority of this current Ravens defense was on that 2023 Triple Crown Ravens defense squad. And I'll still stand on it. If the Ravens ended up winning the Super Bowl in 2023, which that was supposed to be the year, if the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2023, that Ravens defense from that season would be looked at in a historical standpoint as one of the best defenses of all time, I believe. The only defense and the first defense to have a triple crown. They led the league in takeaways, they led the league in sacks, and they led the league in total takeaways, sacks, and points allowed. That is ridiculous from that is pure domination from all the boards from a defensive standpoint. And again, Mike Macdonald was the defensive coordinator. That performance and that defense got him a head coaching job for Seattle. Again, you guys know how I feel about the Mike Macdonald situation. I believe that we should have fired Harbaugh after the AFC Championship loss and promoted Macdonald to the head coach and also had him call the defense. Because could you imagine if Mike Macdonald was coaching this defense of this talent? Again, I understand the injuries right now, but still, Mike Macdonald was able to give Jadeveon Clowney his best year when he was super old. He was able to kind of like revitalize Calvin Noy's career. Like, he made so many like older players that nobody really believed in and made them look incredible on the Ravens defense. So again, for people and for the people out there that don't believe that this is a scheme issue, for people that think this is a talent issue, I just ask you to go look at the Ravens defense from 2 years ago and look at who's on that team, and then look who's on the team now and all the familiar names that are there. And for people that think that Patrick Queen leaving is the difference, I simply ask you to rethink what you're thinking. Patrick Queen for the Steelers has not necessarily been great. He's missed a lot of tackles. He's had some good plays, had some good individual performances, but we're not going to talk about Patrick Queen. When you're a Raven and you leave to go join the Steelers, you don't get talked about anymore. But again, this stat that you're seeing right now, the points allowed stat, again, the most points ever given up through the first 5 weeks in an NFL season ever. And they have also given up 12 more points than the entire 2000 Ravens defense across an entire year, only 5 weeks through the season. And again, it's probably going to get worse because we're playing one of the best offenses in the NFL this week. So it's going to be interesting. Everyone just put your seatbelts on. Hold on tight, because this Sunday's game might get extra. If you thought this game against the Texans was ugly, this game against the Rams might be even uglier. Now, the Rams' defense is worse than the Texans' defense. The Texans' defense is very good. They have two extremely good edge rushers. They have a good secondary. The Texans, over the past couple of years, have had a really, really good defense. And again, they got D'Amico Ryans as the head coach. He's someone who, prides himself on defense. Used to be, a defensive player. Used to be a defensive coordinator for the Niners. Like, he's someone who prides himself on defense, who gets these guys ready to go. So the Texans' defense, it's not surprising that they're good. Like, I'm not surprised that the Ravens' offense wasn't able to do anything against the Texans' defense, because I know how good the Texans' defense is. The Rams' defense is pretty good. They have a lot of good names on there. You got Brandon Fisk. You've got Jared Verse. Like, you've got some young, talented players on the Rams' defense. the Rams defense is worse than the Texans defense. So I do expect our offense to perform better than they did against the Texans. But in terms of our defense against the Rams offense, it's going to be an absolute massacre in this game. And also, in this last game against the Texans, the Ravens defense forced one punt the entire game, and it was in garbage time when Davis Mills was at QB. So again, just extremely disappointing. But overall, just not great. But one more thing that I did want to go over in today's episode was a signing that happened just a couple of hours ago for the Ravens. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the signing on your screen. If you're listening on Spotify and you don't know already who the Ravens signed, we signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now, somebody who has an extremely big personality, someone that pretty much everybody knows in the NFL. He's someone who is, what is he? He's a two-time, I think? No. He's a one-time Super Bowl champion with the Eagles. He won the Super Bowl with the Eagles last season. Someone who kind of made himself one of the more like veteran leader, not really veteran, but a very vocal leader on that Eagles defense. And someone who has made some big plays throughout his career. Now, is he a little washed and is he really not like that good of a player anymore? No, he's really not like, he's not an elite player. He's still a good safety. Like, the Ravens signed him to their practice squad. Obviously, this kind of indicates that they do think that Kyle Hamilton's going to be out for this week. But C.J. Gardner-Johnson is somebody who was on the Texans to start the year. He got traded to the Texans, and he was with the Texans, and he made some plays early on in the season. And then there was just a lot of disagreements and locker room issues, and like just he was a locker room cancer, and they ended up releasing him because I don't really know the specifics of what happened with him on the Texans in terms of like the behind the scenes problems, but there was some sort of behind the scenes problem. They didn't release him based on like his talent. They released him based on just other stuff happening, and he was released, and he's definitely like a talented player. He still has the talent. He can still be good. Again, he was on the Lions. He was on the Eagles. He's traveled across some teams before, and he's someone that like gets traded, a little bit, not because he's bad, but because like teams are interested in him because he plays very physical and he's a very vocal guy who's extremely cocky in the way that he plays. But he is a locker room problem. He is someone that brings drama and just brings negative energy sometimes to a team, especially when a team is not necessarily playing too great. Like when the Texans started off 0-3, they released C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and then they've ended up winning games without him. So I don't really know what my opinion is on this signing. If this was in the offseason, like if this happened in the offseason and we ended up getting him over the offseason, I would have been over the moon. I would have also been a little bit confused because we drafted Malachi Starks. But C.J. Gardner-Johnson is somebody who has always had just problems in terms of, locker room problems and stuff like that. Which obviously, if you're a team that's 1-4 like the Baltimore Ravens, signing someone who is a talented player, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's not talented. He's had a lot of incredible plays throughout his career. He is a little bit older, and he's not as good as a player as he was a couple of years ago. But when you're 1-4 and you're signing somebody who's a locker room cancer and someone who is a locker room problem and brings drama, I don't really know how much that mixes. I don't really know how well that mixes together. So I am a little bit worried that this is just going to end up making the vibes of the team worse. Now, could this actually help us? Yeah. Could he actually go out there and make some plays? For sure. But it's a sign that I'm kind of like on. I'm not over the moon about it. I like the talent. I'm glad from a talent standpoint. I'm glad that he's in the building. Because he's definitely, he's definitely like the best talented like safety out there, I guess. From a talent standpoint, I'm happy that he's here. From a, vocal leader in a good way, I'm happy that he's here. But in terms of like a locker room drama, and again, stuff like that is always unknown because like maybe he'll go to the Ravens and he'll just be in a good mood and maybe things will be happy and maybe there won't be a reason for him to kind of have an attitude with people. Maybe things will be good. Maybe the signing will be good and it'll be smooth sailing and maybe this will be like a big difference maker. And I'm sure that's what Eric DeCosta thinks is going to happen. But at the same time, this is somebody who can bring down the vibes a lot in the locker room, especially on a team that's 1-4 like the Baltimore Ravens are. So we'll see how this ends up working. He is on the practice squad right now. I'm sure we're going to elevate him if Kyle Hamilton doesn't play. So I have C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Malachi Starks out there again. And at the end of the day, this is just depth. This is just depth from a position that of someone who's been proven in the past. We've seen the Ravens do this before when they got guys like Jadeveon Clowney, when they get guys like Calais Campbell, when they sign guys like Jair Alexander, DeAndre Hopkins, stuff like that. They always seem to go kind of get the sloppy seconds of some of these teams or some of these players. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'm not necessarily upset about it, but I'm not over the moon about it because I do know that he does bring a lot of drama. But we'll see what ends up happening. Hopefully this does end up working, and hopefully he can make some plays for this defense. But that's going to be it for today's episode of Birds of a Feather. I know today was a little bit shorter of an episode. I did just kind of want to go over just like a little bit of a rant session about this defense and about the coaching and the scheme and stuff like that, and also talk about the kind of surprise C.J. Gardner-Johnson signing. I really was not expecting us to go get him, but it was kind of interesting to see. But I will have an episode up tomorrow talking about the injury reports and practice reports from the first day of practice this week leading up to the Rams game. Again, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is when practice is for the Ravens, and then they have the day off Saturday, which is the day before the game, and then obviously have the game on Sunday. So this is the final game before the bye week. So this is the tomorrow will be the first practice of the week. We'll go over the injury report, the initial injury report of the week. It's going to be very interesting to monitor the Ravens injury report just because there's so many names that are going to be on it. We'll see if there's any new injuries that pops up, which I don't think there will be, and we'll see if some people can start getting healthy. Guys like Kyle Hamilton, guys like Ronnie Stanley, guys like that. Hopefully they can, guys like Chidobe Awuzie as well. Hopefully they can get healthy and be playing. Because John Harbaugh did say we were going to be in a more healthy position for this game, so we'll see who does come back for the game on Sunday. But obviously we're going to get a lot of guys back, or should get a lot of guys back after the bye week. So we'll see how things are looking. We'll see how the injury report is looking tomorrow. We'll see about any practice reports, quotes, all that stuff from the media. So we'll go over that tomorrow, sometime tomorrow afternoon. But I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great, y'all have a great day. Go O's, go Ravens, and I'll see y'all later. Peace out.